Throughout our lives, we have all, at one time or another, had a person who has served as a mentor, whether they had been selected for us or it was a relationship that simply formed on its own. Take a moment and think about the different mentors that have had an impact in your life. What impact did they have on your life, but not only your life, but your personal growth? Today, we'll be exploring the benefits of mentorship within the mental health field and also through the art of songwriting. I've invited along guests, Syracuse, New York singer-songwriter, author, and music educator, Mr. Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers, as well as my very good friend, Rochester, New York, Executive Director of Compeer Rochester, Ms. Sara Passamonte. This is episode 32, Mentorship of Afternoon Cocktail. My name's Amanda Ashley. I'm your host. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And welcoming to our afternoon cocktail stage, Mr. Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers. Jeffrey, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thank you so much for being a part of our show and for sharing yourself with us. What first song are you going to play for us?
Well, in keeping with the talking about mentorship and teaching, I thought I would play a song that I wrote actually at a songwriting retreat where I was on staff. This is up in northern Michigan a fall or two ago, and during this event everybody comes in on Thursday and everybody's given an assignment to write a song on a particular theme, and you have to finish it by Sunday. So that goes for everybody, staff as well as everybody who's at the retreat. So this is a song that I wrote that weekend under that time pressure. And this is one that's on a brand new album called Live and Listening, and it's called Any Other Way. Here comes the bell, 6:08. The coffee starts to percolate. Big blue mug in my hand. I fill the crossword with a pen. 712 garage door up. I sail on through and sip my cup. I'm at my desk before the boss walks in. Tomorrow I will do it all again. I do it any way I want. No compromise, no need to talk. The choice is mine, the buck stops here. The lines are clean, my rules are clear. I do it any way I please. Don't wait for my apologies. It doesn't really matter what you say, 'cause I wouldn't have it any other way. Now is mine, once was ours. The wife, the kids, the whole 9 yards. Sneakers strewn in the hall. Finger smudges on the wall. Yes, I provided, and all I asked was a simple list of household tasks. She let him slide until one winter day. My wife packed up the kids and moved away. Well, I do it any way I want. No compromise, no need to talk. The choice is mine, the buck stops here. The lines are clean, my rules are clear. I do it any way I please. Don't wait for my apologies. It doesn't really matter what you say. I wouldn't have it. Sunday I am on my knees. I give the rag a gentle squeeze. Wash the old oak floors until they shine. Some days the silence can be loud. The empty spaces call me out. I see the hollow eyes inside the mirror. How am I here? Do it any way I want. No compromise. compromise, no need to talk. The choice is mine, the buck stops here, the lines are clean, my rules are clear. I do it any way I please, just trying to keep my mind at ease. One step at a time and every day. I wouldn't have it, I wouldn't have it, I couldn't have it any other way.
Bravo, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, you are such an interesting man. I loved. I mean, you're such a natural storyteller. It's obvious through your music. You tell. You kind of have like a folk rock edge. I've listened to some of your live performances. So you play also with what is it, like a 5-piece band or sometimes even more?
Yeah, well, 4-piece band usually with partner Wendy Ramsey, who actually comes from the Rochester area there. She and I play as a duo. We call ourselves Pepper and Sassafras. And then with the full band, we have a bassist who also is a great saxophone player and an amazing drummer, Josh DeCaney and Jason Fridley. So that was the last album we made, was actually the 4 of us playing live in one of our favorite new venues here in Syracuse, which we're anxiously awaiting the return of right now,
Sure.
called the 443 Social Club and Lounge. So we had so much great stuff happens when we improvisationally, when we play live, and we really wanted to capture that. And so we did an album of almost all new material, all live.
Very cool. So you're well. First off, Pepper is your true middle name, right?
It's my true middle name, although I get accused of making it up all the time. But, yeah, I had a great uncle. It was his last name. We have the same birthday, so my parents decided to give that to me as my middle name. Always wanted to use it, and finally, when I started writing and playing music professionally, just decided to use my full name, and so it's been Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers since then.
Very cool. And so you grew up actually in New Jersey, not Syracuse, right?
Right. Yep.
And I read in your bio, so I mean, you started playing music really early on and even gigging out pretty early on with your brother, who is also a songwriter and musician. It seems like you had quite a bit of luck. So what was the story with you met Patti Smith's? There was a correlation to Patti Smith, right?
Yes, when I was about 15, I think, we had through a series of fortuitous connections, we had a chance to meet Lenny Kaye, who played guitar with Patti Smith, and play him our songs, and got some amazing feedback from him, actually, which is, I mean, you're talking about mentorship, and for me, there's so many things that I can look back on, which is sometimes even just a single encounter or a comment that somebody made. And we had one song that we played like a bluegrass sort of song, and he said, wait, just try it, slow it way down, play it like a rock song and just see what happens. And we did, and he just kind of opened up this whole, a bunch of new avenues for how to think about it. And we were so new to songwriting at the time, and that really stuck with me a long time. But yeah, so had that, and then my brother and I played together all through my teenage years, started performing. We both wound up in San Francisco. We had a band out there called Heavy Wood, and then eventually I got involved in starting Acoustic Guitar Magazine out in California, and through that I met many of my favorite musicians in the world, and again, learning so much by interviewing all these incredible artists. And so, but eventually, since you asked about where I was from, eventually I moved east again, wound up in Syracuse, and started doing solo albums, solo music, separate from my brother, who's still out in California and still very active in music himself in a couple of bands.
Do you miss California at all? It's so different from
I do.
Syracuse. Yeah.
I do. Although I was not one of the people who moved to California to get away from winter. I love the winter and I love the snow, and so Syracuse is a good place for winter and snow. But I do. I mean, I loved it out there. I lived there for 14 years. Beautiful area. Difficult area to live in if you're a writer and a musician, as I was. Just hard to afford. I have kids who were born out there, and so moving to a place with a more reasonable cost of living was a very good thing.
Sure.
And it was good to be back on the East Coast again. And my folks are still there. They're in Philadelphia now, and kind of good to be in the East Coast orbit again. So I loved it out there. Happy to go out and visit, but it's good to be east again also.
So, what type of music filled the walls of your home growing up? So, you and your brother were both jamming out, but what were you both listening to on the radio or on your,
Yeah. Well, definitely this sort of classic singer-songwriter music, James Taylor, Neil Young, Cat Stevens, that and Paul Simon and Garfunkel. That was probably really the foundational music for me more than anything. And I got later to meet Paul Simon and meet James Taylor, and so that was amazing. And then, so there was that side of it, and then we also loved soul and funk oriented music. Huge Stevie Wonder fan. Loved Earth, Wind and Fire. A lot of music like that. And later on, got into the Grateful Dead and that whole world, and that became a really huge part of my sort of finding my my way in music, and then also had a chance to meet Jerry Garcia a couple years before he died. So a lot of these early influences sort of came back around once I got in, became a music journalist, and had opportunities to meet a lot of these people.
That's so amazing. So let's talk about, let's rewind a little bit and talk a little bit about, you'd mentioned Acoustic Guitar Magazine. What was your role in the publication?
So when I was living in San Francisco and working as a freelance editor, writer, and as a musician, playing around with my brother. I was hired to be the editor. There was a very small company, 4 people at the time, that published another magazine called Strings for violin family instruments, mostly classical music magazine. They had just started to start a magazine called Acoustic Guitar. We're looking for an editor, a writer, editor, musician. So I was very young. I was 25. I got tapped to be the editor and basically put the whole editorial side of the magazine together. So I was the editor for the first 10 years of Acoustic Guitar, which is now celebrating its 30th anniversary this year.
Wow.
Which makes me
Great.
feel old, but it's the truth. So that's been incredible to see that that's taken root the way that it has, and still at it. And I'm still involved. I'm called editor at large these days. I do interviews, write lessons, do a lot of work for Acoustic Guitar still. From there, they're still based in California.
So could you tell us a little bit, like I visited the website, and it seems like there's some instructional videos for those aspiring guitar players, and there's tips on songwriting. Is that correct? Also, you said music journalism. You have some interviews placed on there. Is there anything else I'm missing?
You mean on my website or?
Oh, no, for
Or
acoustic guitar.
For acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's, it covers the gamut of, lesson type stuff, interviews, a lot about equipment too, reviews of guitars and gear and that sort of stuff. Although I tend to be more involved in the artist side of it, interviewing artists and then writing lessons. But yeah, all those things, and songwriting is a big part of it, and you know, and I really wanted that to be a big part of it from the beginning, because that's how I I love the guitar more than anything, but I relate to the instrument and to music through really as a songwriter first. Everything that I learn on guitar is based on things that I want to hear or do in a song, or that I hear in somebody else do in a song.
Sure. So, I mean, you had also mentioned, I mean, you've met a ton of high-profile celebrities and people that have influenced you in your music over time. I mean, what was that like initially? Like, did you ever actually like geek out and like, or be like, oh my God, like I know you said you had met Jerry Garcia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like one of your idols. You
Mm-hmm.
actually have a Grateful Dead band, right? Currently, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you play with. So, I mean, what was it like
Yep.
to interview your idol?
Yeah, it's well, amazing. You know, I felt such a privilege to have some of these people just take a chunk of time and sit down to talk. But I have found that uh, I really haven't had the experience of, you know, I try of getting all tongue tied because, you know, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, this person is such a big, you know, star, such a big influencer, big hero. I think the key for me to all of it has just been really thinking like, talking to musicians like musicians, and you know, when it comes down to it, they are just regular people with special talents, and you know, the less I'm in a sort of a fan mode, and the more it's just like we're going to have a conversation, an intelligent conversation about music, the better it is for me, the better, the more better they respond too, because people, especially very famous musicians, just don't really get talked to that way by journalists all that often. It's much more, um, it's usually much more putting them on a sort of a pedestal, or trying to knock them off a pedestal or something.
Mm.
So um, it felt great, but you know, and a lot of my shaking my head about it would happen sort of afterwards, to realize like, wow, I just, you know, spent the afternoon with Jerry Garcia and David Grisman, or you know, and just feel very lucky for it. But in the moment, it just feels, honestly, um, just like just trying to have a good conversation with somebody and be interested in who they are as an individual. Um, so yeah, it's and the more I feel like that, the better the interviews go.
Sure. Now, who do you credit to being your greatest mentor in life? I know you had mentioned like there's, you know, and we had talked about this before, you know, actually going on camera here, but is there anybody that sticks out in your mind that you feel has had the most influence on your life and on your
Mm-hmm.
songwriting?
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of music, no, I was thinking about it. In terms of writing, there's a very specific college writing teacher, who really, it was the moment when it really crystallized for me that I wanted to do more with it than just be interested in it, but that I really wanted to make my life partly around writing. And that was, you know, I've actually just wrote him a letter just recently to just express my thanks for that all those years ago. But in terms of music, there are so many. I learned things from so many of the people that I have met, and every time I have another one of these interviews, I learn more things. But there are a few people who probably stand out. One of them I haven't mentioned yet is Pete Seeger, who I had a really nice ongoing relationship with. Interviewed several times, went to his house once, and was always very responsive. And he actually made an incredible, for being as well known as he is. I mean, his whole life was about trying to encourage other people to make music and to create and to be involved in their communities. And he tried in his life to answer every letter that was written to him by anybody in the world. And that was an incredible number of people. And he wrote postcards and, offering advice, trying to inspire people to create. And I found that to be just an incredible example, because for him, being a musician was never about trying to make himself famous, rich, anything. It was all about what good can his music do. And, if you went to a concert with Pete Seeger, it was all about, can he get other people to sing? Not all of you sit back and listen to me sing. And his whole attitude about all that was just a really profound influence on me and so many other people. I've had this conversation with a lot of other musicians who feel the same way, that he showed there's another way to think about all this other than ego gratification, that it's, how are you serving people, and what can you share with others that will, inspire them, make their lives richer. So for sure, a really important mentor to me, as well as hundreds or thousands of other people that he interacted with so generously.
It seems like what he has given to you in that sense, you seem to be doing a good job of giving that to others as well. I mean, you're an incredible man. I mean, you wear so many hats. I mean, between your writing and your song. I mean, you're writing for journalism, and also, you had mentioned that you've run some retreats, and you're also an educator. So you had mentioned to me that you teach at Syracuse University a songwriting course, and also you teach lessons on the side. I mean, how does mentoring others and helping other aspiring musicians, how has that contributed to your own personal growth?
Oh, it does so much. I mean, in fact, I always feel that when I'm in any kind of teaching context, when I feel like I'm learning things, that's when the teaching is going well, and that's when it's going the best for the other people who are there as well. So having to try to explain things that I might have just done instinctively is incredibly useful. I've learned so much by just having to try to put it into words or demonstrate something. When people articulate problems that they're having or roadblocks, things that they want to learn, it immediately kind of touches on things that I'm working on myself. And, I really feel like we're all sort of in it together in that way. So it's funny because I didn't set out really to be a teacher. I became a teacher. I became a writer first, and then I started doing a lot of teaching in writing, which led to writing guidebooks for musicians. I have a book called The Complete Singer-Songwriter, all about sort of the creative process and about being a songwriter. And out of my writing came doing lesson books, and then videos, and then out of that came doing workshops, and then individual lessons. Now I'm doing online courses, and as well as the university teaching that I do. So one thing just kind of led to another, but as I've gotten further and further into the teaching side, the more I just realize how much of a learning experience, growth experience it is for me. I mean, we have a songwriting course that's starting up next week, teaching with my friend Natalia Zuckerman, a great songwriter herself. We have a dozen people registered from all over the country, from Canada. And, I'm just excited about, that we have a 16-year-old rapper from Colorado is in the group, and electronic musicians and acoustic musicians, all ages. And the way people will come together and share. And, I love that stuff. And I definitely get tons out of it myself, and it reflects in my own music.
I always find it so inspirational to be around other creative people. You know, like the more I've run some open mics over time, and yeah, just being in a room of other writers and people that are creative. You know, no matter what genre they're playing, there's so much to take from. There's so much to give and take in life, you know, from the people around you and what we could offer ourselves. And yeah, I think that's incredible. I mean, Jeffrey, I wish you the best of luck. Not that you need it; you're just doing fine, you know. But I mean, you know, keep up with all these endeavors and inspiring others. And I wish you well on your continued musical journey. So we are going to hear one more song from Jeffrey towards the end of the program. Jeffrey, thank you again for your time. Before we get into our next part of our interviews with Miss Sara Passamonte, I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors today, Electronic Merchant Systems of New York. If you guys are in need of accepting credit card payments or any assistance, make sure you see the charge card guys. Untamed Events, Miss RebeccaDodge.com. She will help you with all your party planning needs. And hello to my friends at the Jewish Senior Life, Jewish Home of Rochester. Salvatore's Pizzeria. Make sure you get your orders in for your pizza over the weekend, or if not tonight. And thank you to the Sawmill at Blades. They are located on University. Make sure you check out bladesrock.com for their full menu, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They also have outdoor seating and a full bar. Sara P., how are you, my girl?
I am great.
Good to see you. So, today I want to talk to you a little bit about mental health. I mean, so obviously this pandemic has brought on awareness and a spotlight on mental health, considering, you know, isolation and how everybody's been coping. Even the healthiest of people have been struggling a bit. So, before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about you and your journey through Compeer?
Yeah, I'm Sara Passamonte. I am an evolving human in this world, just like the rest of us. I was born and raised here in Rochester by two parents who are musicians, and I, dabbled in music as a kid, but also took an interest in mental health when I was in middle school and was part of some group counseling, not only for myself, but with my friends. I remember even back being in elementary school, actually, when my parents divorced, being in a counseling group for kids of divorced parents, and just always wanted to have that opportunity for dialogue for myself and for people that I was around. So when I was in high school, I decided I was going to go to college for psychology, didn't really know what I was going to do with that. And in my college years, discovered Compeer and really ended up with an internship there and never left. I had one other job after college. I had a few other jobs in high school, but it was Compeer where I really landed. And I found that our non-clinical mental health approach is a community-based organization and involving everyday people in volunteering as mentors was exactly where I wanted to be, and have been there for 15 years. In August, it will be 15 years. So went from intern to executive director in 14 years, and it's just been incredible. It's a great agency, which we'll talk more about.
So, yeah, it is, and congratulations. I mean, I know I've already told you this before, but I mean, you definitely worked your way up and you've earned that title, girl. So, companion and peer are at the root of the word compeer. Can you share with us maybe like one of your favorite success stories from the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about how it started, because our founder, Bunny Skirble, back in the 70s, was involved in a very small program at the State Psychiatric Hospital, which is Rochester Psychiatric Center today. She herself was in a really bad car accident, and she had two small children, and she ended up being in the hospital for months, and found that having her friends around to help not only with things that were going on at home, but to come visit her, were key to her recovery. And around this time had, been participating in this program at the hospital with psychiatric patients. And also around that time, deinstitutionalization was happening. So people were being let out of the hospitals with not as many supports as you would want people to have after having that formal support in a hospital setting. So she founded Compeer in 1973 and made it a program for, again, everyday people to volunteer and befriend, mentoring and befriending people with mental illness, adult to adult. In the 80s, we started youth programming, have added so many programs since then. Our most recent population added being veterans back in 2010 for Compeer Core. So we have, and then the Compeer model has actually been spread worldwide. So we have a lot of locations that have popped up over in the United States, a lot in New York State that Bunny herself had disseminated the program through those states early on, and then new ones that are popping up. So our newest location is in London, actually.
Oh, wow.
So Compeer's really served, tens of thousands of people. But a success story that I will share is my own story as a volunteer, because it's closest to my heart, and I can, I've seen so much, and I've recruited so many volunteers with the program over the years, but I like to always share about my Compeer experiences, and I have two. I have one in working with children when I first started, and I, along with my boyfriend at the time, had mentored 3 children who were siblings. It's not the norm at Compeer to take on 3 kids at the same time, but we did it as a couple, and it ended up being that I've been in their life for the 15 years I've been at Compeer. So these 7 and 8-year-old kids who are now adults, in their 20s, and having them, just graduate high school and get jobs. It's not like this tremendous thing where it's like, this one became the president. I wish she would have, or this one became, they're still evolving too. But something I've been talking about at Compeer is an idea we're calling mini milestones. And that's a campaign that we're developing, in that mentoring is not necessarily about these huge steps from A to Z. It's all the things that go in between. So mini milestones, again, about, just watching kids grow up and graduate and get jobs and get married and get houses. That's been awesome to see. And then my other story is about my adult Compeer friend that I've been linked with for 10 years. Her name is Carol. And we were connected through the Compeer calling program, really e-buddies, when I was a little bit earlier on in my career. I said, I don't really have a lot of time, but I'll, email this woman. And my colleague at the time had picked her out for me and said, I think this would be a perfect match for you. And, she was in her 40s, I was in my 20s, and we were like, how is this all going to go? We connected by email. I think we emailed for about maybe 2 months before we're like, okay, we're going to meet. So we had our first outing at, I think it was Wendy's back in, 2010. And we hit it off so well. We call each other sisters. And even to this day, COVID aside, we text all the time, and we get together normally at least once or twice a month and hang out. It'd be nice to go get a cup of coffee right now, which I think we're going to actually do Saturday for the first time in months because quarantine. So
Yeah.
we can talk about how that's affected the Compeer model and really taken our entire business model and put it under attack by this virus who says social distancing, and you can't get together in person, and you can't do the things that you love with the people that you love to do it with. And it's been really challenging, but at the same time, it is helping, I think, all those everyday people I talked about as volunteers. If you haven't experienced mental illness up until this point, this has certainly given you an opportunity for that. Whether you're just feeling closed in because you can't go, again, do the things that you love to do, or you're missing your friends, or you're missing that physical connection of being able to hug your friends and talk in close quarters. We have a newfound sense, I think, of empathy that average people, whether they have experienced mental illness or had a family member or friend, I think it's all so fresh. We have this opportunity to actually get more awareness around a business like Compeer, a model like Compeer, because now you've felt it too. So if you were never lonely before, you've experienced it now. And we've seen a lot of people step up to help. So what we've done with that energy is have people go through Compeer calling and e-buddies, which is how I got started with this person that I've now been connected with for 10 years. It's really still an opportunity for people to connect in a safe way right now while things get sorted out in that world outside. So we're still taking volunteers, and it's been actually really awesome to see the agency and the community members in Rochester rise to this challenge of how are we going to still get our mental health needs met and do it in a safe way.
So when you're when you're matching people, right? So how does it work out? So the person that wants to be mentored, do they fill out like a profile? These are like the things that I'm struggling with, kind of thing, and then you match them according to the volunteers' profile. I mean, how does that all work together?
There's actually several people involved in this process because most of our referrals come from mental health professionals. So you typically have an individual, either a child or an adult, who is already seeing a mental health professional of some sort. It could be a school counselor, it could be a social worker, it could be a private psychologist. They fill out the initial paperwork along with the person who is seeking services, or the parent of a child if they're young. And then when we get that paperwork, which gives kind of I wouldn't say clinical, but sort of a clinical perspective and a social social assessment of what that person is going through. And then the person seeking services themselves would also do an interview with us. So they'd fill out their own self-report. We want to hear from a child, what's your favorite color? Just something that, a volunteer can read or be read to and say, oh yeah, like we're into the same TV shows, or we're into the same hobbies, or I have this experience personally, so I can relate to this person on that. So it's between a mental health professional, a parent if there is a child involved, and then the client themselves get to kind of say what they want and what they're looking for. And then we do the same thing on the volunteers end. They do an intake process with us, a pretty hefty process of screening and training. Our training is about 2.5 hours individually done with each person to kind of tailor it to what their experience level is. And then they get presented with matches based on the things that they've said that they want to do or where they feel comfortable, and a combination of what that client said that they were seeking. And we look at location. Normally a volunteer is going to go pick up the client. We don't want you driving, from Webster to Brockport and miss out on all that time. So we try to look at all those factors, but it's really it's like a matchmaking service in a friendship and mentorship way that hopefully everybody gets what they need to get out of it. And a volunteer really gets their pick because we have people waiting. It's not the other way around. I look forward to the day where Compeer has a waiting list of volunteers, and then each client gets to pick their volunteer a little bit more freely. But to that end, it still does the job.
Has it ever worked out that two people just were not jiving, that they were matched together, and one of them was like, I don't know about this, like, has that ever happened?
My husband, actually, when he and I first met, he signed up to volunteer to impress me, and he was really looking for this opportunity himself to do something like this. And the first kid he picked did not like him, and he was like, nope. And it was just so funny because I actually loved it, because anytime, especially a young person, can advocate for themselves and just be like, this, I'm not feeling it. And he may not have been feeling the whole program. I mean, some kids, especially like in that 14, 15 range, they may or may not really be into it. So we really try to like test for that before we make a match, but it just wasn't happening. And we're people, right? So there's always that possibility that the person you pick maybe isn't into what you're into, or especially now, I feel like it's got to be so hard for people to find that common ground without the activities to kind of help. Usually we have activities to help build that rapport. So our volunteers have had to get really creative with, Zooming and gaming online, and our staff are putting together things like scavenger hunts and facilitated conversation, because normally a volunteer would just go pick up a client and you can go for a walk together at the very least. So we're getting back to that, and only time will tell in the next few weeks, months, about when people are going to be able to do that in person. But it's been an interesting journey for sure. And if it doesn't work out, we just find people a new match. And
sure. So for the volunteers, I mean, is this something that's expected? I mean, you said you've been mentoring, people for 10 years, Is there a timestamp on, how long a volunteer has to volunteer for? Like if I
It's
was
not
just like,
10 years.
hey, no, yeah, I figured not, but like if I was just like, you know what, like I just want to do something for like the next 6 months, is that cool
So we
to
usually
do?
ask for a year commitment. And I do want
Okay.
to take a little bit of time to talk about our veterans too, so remind me. But in our one-to-one matches, we ask for a year commitment because it usually takes that long to build that rapport, like 3 to 6 months. And by the time you've gotten there, you want to make sure that you have time to, see the relationship through. And the vast majority of people who make it to the year point end up going longer. And again, not usually 10 years, although we have had some matches in our adult program going 20, 30 years,
Wow.
believe it or not. And at that point, because it's just become Carol with Carolyn and myself, it's like it just is a natural thing. It's a natural part of my day to talk to her and a natural part of my month to meet with her. But typically it's a year commitment, and especially in the youth program, we need to make sure that those kids have, that time with a person. A short-term opportunity would be our Compeer Calling and e-buddies program, because the goal of that program is to get somebody typically connected with that person, so that it alleviates their wait for that one-to-one in-person volunteer. So I always put that out to people who are kind of trying to just dip their toes in the water before they commit to something long-term. And a lot of times it does end up becoming a one-to-one in-person match. And then our veterans, for any veterans listening or who see this later after the fact, our veteran program, Compeer Core, is a lot different. We don't do one-to-one matches. We put all veterans together in group activities, and they've actually been able to do a lot on Zoom. So one of the things they've been doing is painting. They get all their supplies delivered to them, and then they all go on together and get the instruction on making this painting. And they've been doing that, I think, weekly. They've been doing yoga on Zoom, and actually with one of my teachers, and there's things that we've been doing kind of in the meantime to get these things bridged while things are happening and getting hopefully safer outside.
Incredible. I think your program especially. I mean, for mental health, I think I had Nami Rochester on last season, and we had talked about just how important that support is, to have a steady support system for those that are dealing with some mental trauma, or that are feeling that off balance, especially throughout these times. So I mean, Compeer, thank goodness for companies like yours, that are helping out our vets and the youth of our future as well get through all these difficult times.
NAMI is such a great partner agency. NAMI, Mental Health Association, East House. We have so many partners in this network of community-based mental health providers, and we talk a lot. And there's mentorship that happens there. I'm a part of a lot of groups of executive directors, and they even have it narrowed down to like executive directors of smaller agencies or executive directors of. I'm part of a new executive director group, and I found so much support in the mental health field from colleagues, not only internal at Compeer, like my boss of, just up until this past January, who retired. She was a mentor of mine for many, many years, and colleagues I've had along the way, and people at those other agencies that are just wonderful to work with and make you proud to be part of that close-knit nonprofit community in Rochester.
Sure, there's so much to learn from each other, and to to better your mission and to make your mission more effective. I love that you guys work together. That's awesome. That's so cool. Where could our listeners be connected to Compeer Rochester? Where could they find out more information?
CompeerRochester.org. We also have our Facebook page up and running pretty smoothly these days, so there's a lot of good information on there. And but the website will give you, an opportunity to sign up if you're interested or just want to hear a little bit more. One of our coordinators will contact you if you sign up to get more information. There's videos on there. There's success stories. Our new annual report from 2019 should be up there soon to kind of show you where we get our funding from and how we do what we do. We also have some more formal services for people who need a little bit more than a community volunteer. If they need more time with somebody, we have some really great dedicated paid staff that work with individuals on life skills and day-to-day things out in the community as well. So Compeer is evolving as well. It's a growing program, even despite things like coronavirus that come in and throw everybody for a loop. It's still a growing agency, and we have a lot of work to do as I think mental health becomes a little bit more in the forefront, maybe a little less stigmatized because so many people are experiencing issues now, and just making this like an everyday volunteer opportunity, like that people just think, all right, I want to help. I want to go to a place like Compeer and get connected with a person and help a person, and in that one-to-one capacity. Is really priceless.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Sara, for sharing all this with us. And I think it's so important that, that awareness stays relevant, for everybody. We all know somebody that might be struggling a little bit right now, and that support is so important. So make sure you do that, and check out Compeer's website as well as their Facebook page. Give them a like and show your support that way as well. I'm going to bring Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers back to close us out with one more song. Jeffrey, what are you going to play for us?
All right. I'm going to play a song called Fly, which was a grand prize winner of the John Lennon Songwriting Contest. And it's an older song that actually grew so much in playing it with the band and performing it that I revisited it on this new album, Live and Listening. So it has a whole second life now, but it's called Fly. And it's actually a duet, but I'll sing both sides of the conversation here. Fly away, drop what you're doing. Gray skies will soon be blueing. No doubt, am entertaining? No reason for explaining. Been too long anticipating, fed up with contemplating. No more will I be waiting, 'cause we got stones on our shoulders and steps to climb. We're losing our breath in the crush of time. Gather the weight and the questions on your mind, and leave it all behind. Fly away, stop with teasing. I got a bag of reasons. No way I be going, no matter how it's blowing. Been too long, too much dealing. Today I got a feeling this moment is for stealing. 'Cause we got stones on our shoulders and steps to climb. We're losing our breath in the crush of time. Gather the weight and the worries on your mind, and leave it all behind. drop what you're doing. Gray skies will soon be blueing, no doubt. My entertaining, no reason for explaining, no doubting, no reason, no waiting, no teasing, no talking, no secret. Just spread your wings and fly. Fly.
The incredible Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers. Jeffrey, can you tell our audience your website? Where could they find your music and more about you?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff at jeffreypepperrodgers.com, which I know is a handful, but Jeffrey, Jeffrey, Pepper, Rodgers, Rodgers. If you Google any variation on the spelling, you'll land on it. I got a ton of stuff online. Music, info on my books, videos, a bunch of free lessons for guitarists and songwriters, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah.
Amazing. Continued success to you, Jeffrey. Thank you again for your
Thanks so
time
much.
and for sharing your music with us. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Hope
This
to
was
meet you
fun.
in life. Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
It was fun. Well, let me leave you all off with a few closing words. So today we talked about mentorship and mental health, and we also talked about mentorship through the art of songwriting. Mentorship to me it's a twofold relationship, which the opportunity to grow and develop another person in turn provides a meaningful and powerful experience for the other. These relationships are so important because it is through mentorships that we continue to learn and to grow and to become better versions of ourselves. In the process, we also develop our skills to serve as a mentor to someone else and to continue the practice of promoting growth. I look at it as a way of paying it forward in the form of support, paying it forward in the realm of experience and encouragement. We all have something to offer and something to gain from those around us. It is up to us to lead by example. The greatest gift one could ever give another is kindness, support, and encouragement because we are always at our best when we bring out the best in others and those around us. Thank you for tuning into today's show. I hope you enjoyed our episode 32. Big thank you again to Ms. Sara Passamonte and Compeer Rochester for your support as well as a new sponsor. And to Jeffrey Pepper Rodgers, again, shout outs to our sponsors, Electronic Merchant Systems, Rebecca Dodge at Untamed Events, the Jewish Senior Life, also Salvatore's Pizzeria, and the Sawmill at Blades. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, and I wish you all a great day, a great Wednesday, and we'll see you back here this Friday with a brand new show. Have a great one.